So who enjoyed my friend Ian? Up the Scots. So for some of you, if it seemed too much in some technical detail, don't panic. It was rather simple when you go over it again and again, and you just have to substitute your figures. Right now, you don't have to worry about that too much. Right now, what we want to do is focus on in creating the wealth and then structure it. Okay? So that will come in when it's most appropriate. For some of that stuff that Ian covered, you won't even have to worry about it for some of you straight away. It's something that you need to be aware of and you put it in place when it's most appropriate to you. What I want to cover this session is this will be a very big session. This session will go for about a little over 3 hours. However, it will be worth it. What we're going to get into, if you're interested, we're going to look at some ways to get started for investing, even if you don't have any money. Okay, so if you're starting from zero or below, how you get started, or if you have access to plenty of money, how do you get access to that quicker and start to invest it? Numerous different ways we're going to do that. Then we're going to get into some of my favourite strategies. We're going to look at some instant cash flow strategies. We're going to look at the share market. We'll go through about half a dozen strategies in general, and then we're going to focus on 2 strategies in particular. One of those strategies will be how do you rent out your shares and generate instant cash flow, where I believe anyone in this room, even if you're a teenager, could be applying that strategy, and how you get access to money even if you don't have any for that, to get into that, and then how you make money even without owning the shares and things like that. So we'll build on that. Anyone interested in knowing how to make at least $4,000 or $5,000 a month in instant cash flow? Okay, well, we'll look at that as well. So a lot to get through. I want to build it and keep it simple. I'm going to go through this so everyone understands it. But as we go through new concepts, I know some people they get worried. Yeah, I'm not quite understanding it. Just take your notes. You'll go back over it again. You'll listen to your audio tapes or watch it on video, etc., until it makes sense to you. Does it make sense? Okay. So let's get started and let's look at Bill and Mary. Bill and Mary, the average Australian couple, which probably means they're broke. Is that right? Average Australian couple, they earn good money though. So they earn about $48,000 a year, which is pretty good money, combined income. So the challenge is, like most Australians, they spend more than they earn, they get themselves into bad debt, they don't really invest. They tend to go, if they do invest, they tend to go and rely on other people like financial planners or bank managers, accountants, etc., rather than learning how to educate themselves to become investors. And in other words, if they do any investing, it's usually making other people wealthy rather than themselves because they're not educated. So we want to do the opposite of that. So let's look at what most people would do. Here's my recommendation. The first place you should invest, I think I mentioned this to you before, is in yourself. If you look at the best returns you're going to get, it's going to be in your education. Will that be fair enough? Because you can invest here and there and learn different skills, you can get a massive return on your knowledge and your mindset. So that's the only place I recommend you should start with investing. Then we're going to say, okay, and that's what we're doing this weekend, of course. Then what do we do with our money? There's only a few different areas you can actually invest. So you can look at property, is that true? And in property, there's commercial and residential and resorts and a whole host of different things in there. Then we can look at shares, the share market. And what else can we invest our money into? Okay, so bonds and things like that, we'll put that in equities, in shares. What about businesses? Can we invest in businesses? Yeah. Some people in the room have done that. And there's not too many other areas you can invest. Most investments will come back into each of those areas. Okay, you could buy some gold and things like that, but these are the most general areas. So what we're going to look at is most people, when investing in property, many people never buy property other than their house. If they ever start to invest in, say, residential property, the challenge with many of them is they'll buy one property and never buy a second one. In other words, and they usually sell that first property they buy within 5 years. Most people are not successful property investors. One reason they're not is they don't know how to buy quality property, and they're usually flown to the Gold Coast. Is it true? Okay, either from New Zealand or from Melbourne or Sydney, and flown to the Gold Coast, and they get free airfares as long as they sign on the dotted line and pay an extra $30,000 or $40,000 or sometimes more for an overpriced property. And that's the challenge. So many people end up losing money. As I said, it's very difficult to lose money in residential property, but some people have figured out how to do it. And that's usually the way you do it. Go to a negative gearing seminar that's promoted by marketeers that will fly you and try and sell you above price property. And that happens a lot, unfortunately. However, for an educated investor, that should not happen. You should never pay too much for a property. Paul Clitheroe recently on the Money Show, we watched the Money Show, and he was saying how people go to these seminars and they go to a $3,000 seminar and then they go to a $10,000 seminar, and the only one that makes money is the people that do the seminars, and then people, after doing a $10,000 seminar, they then go and pay $50,000 more than what a property's worth. Now, I question some of those things he was talking about, because my thinking is this: if someone's invested into a $3,000 seminar and then say a $10,000 seminar, they're very unlikely to go out and spend $50,000 more on a property than what it's worth. Does that make sense? Because why would you? Because how hard is it to get an independent valuation on a property? Is it difficult? You don't have to be that smart. If you want to be extra sure, you get a second valuation. So it's very difficult for that to happen, but some people apparently must be happening out there. I'm not aware of it happening other than through negative gearing type seminars. So property for most people doesn't tend to work. We're going to look at how do we make it work, and we're going to go into that a lot tomorrow. And I can cover property tonight, but tomorrow I'm going to have a property speaker come in, and we're going to go through numerous strategies and that, including how to buy property no money down. Okay, and also the strategies that I use very effectively. And it's so simple, it doesn't take a lot of time to teach that. Let's look at shares. Now, shares, most people aren't too excited about shares because they think they take a long time to make money in. Is that true? And, it's some people think it's like gambling, etc. like that. I wasn't interested in shares until I learned how to generate cash flow, taking little time and low to medium risk. And once I learned strategies, which I'll teach you tonight and tomorrow, shares become very exciting. But most people are not aware of those strategies. Okay, so most people, shares, very few people make money in the share market. And then we can look at businesses. Well, we mentioned a bit of that on the first day, that 80% of people that start in business in the first 5 years will go bust, and the next 5 years after that, 80% of those will. So most people in business are going to lose as well. So we could look at that and say, let's just stay in our job and hope that works well. What we're going to do is the opposite. And so what we're going to look at in most of these strategies, we're going to do the opposite to what most people do. We're going to do the opposite in property. We're going to do the opposite in shares. And if we get into business, well, I'm not even going to teach you about buying businesses and things like that, because we're going to treat these two things as business. Okay? These two things as businesses. And my belief is, for the average Australian, for someone who wants to become a successful investor, if you use the right strategy, we're going to teach you in these areas here, these are much better businesses than going out and buying a business. Okay, that's just my opinion. Does it make sense? You can go out and buy businesses and things like that, but I consider that a higher risk investment, and do that after you've mastered these areas. Because then you'll have enough money where you can afford a business. Does that make sense? In other words, you can afford to lose money then get a business. So up until you can afford to lose your money, probably on a go through an example tonight of how these are very effective businesses at much lower risk than a traditional business. However, in saying that, a large percentage of people become wealthy do it through their own business. Are you aware of that? So what we want to look at is turn you into a business. Who's already in business for themselves? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of people. And remember, in the 21st century, everyone is in business for themselves. So who's in business for themselves? Everyone. Very good. So what I want to look at is, how do you go about increasing that? So let me give you an example. I was thinking this the other day. I was with some friends in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. Who's been to Thailand? Has anyone been to Thailand? Quite a few people. Thailand's I think is a wonderful country. And what I was thinking of when I was over there is, let's put it in a conceptual area where people are starting, and how, no matter where they're at, how they can create a lot of wealth. So draw this down as we go. And I'm just going to create it as I go. So put you up here. Okay, so this is yourself. You're in the box there. So most people, let's say, some people in the room are starting with equity behind them. Is that true? Some people own a house or part of a house. So other people say, well, that's not fair. Of course it's going to be easy for them to retire Monday because they've got some equity. But what if you're not? So those who have a house, we'll just draw it in anyhow. If you've got a house, you put that in there. If you have a house and some equity in it, so in other words, part of it's yours, that's great. If all of it's yours, you know, you go straight to the top level, you know what I'm saying? So wherever you are. So if you've got some equity, or if you own the whole house, that is a bonus. But for most of us, we don't start there. We start with just a job. Is that fair enough? So we have an income. Now some people saying, Jamie, I don't even start there. I'm starting up here. I don't even have a job. Okay. Well, guess what the first step might be if you're in that situation? Is to get a job. Okay. And how long does it take to get a job in Australia? Depends if you're committed or not, doesn't it? If you're not committed, it can take generation after generation, you know, third generation welfare. Okay? But it's probably similar in New Zealand. But if you're committed, you'll find a job. Here's the mindset of a millionaire. A millionaire will do whatever it takes to become wealthy. In other words, if they have to take a lowly paid job, a job they don't even like in the beginning, as a temporary solution, they will do it. Is it fair enough? Where many middle-class people have too much status, they've been to university or whatever, and they want to start with a high-paying job, not willing to start at the bottom. I can remember, I was so committed when I was younger, that I left the security, I left the security of a job, because I knew it was holding me back. And I'm not suggesting you go out and do this, but I'm just saying where my mindset was at. I left the security of a job because I knew I was too comfortable. I had to stretch. And I didn't know how I was going to live the next week, okay, or pay rent. But I said I'd be willing to do whatever it took because that would make me be creative and come up with a way. And this is just before I started my telecommunications company. And what I did is that, because I was absolutely committed, what I did for a very short period of time was I delivered KFC. And why I did that is, one, I needed some income because I wasn't going to go back to a secure job. I was going to do whatever it took until I found out what I was going to do. And what was good, I only had to deliver it for 2 nights. Okay? And I made myself do it because it proved to myself I'd be willing to do whatever it took. If I had to do that, I would do it. And I only had to do it for 2 nights because guess what? How creative I got in those 2 nights. So I never ever want to do this ever again. I had to come up with ideas in order to make some money. It worked for me because I come up with the idea to start a telecommunications company. And I had to borrow the money to get into that. But it got creative. So you see, that worked for me. Do you know what I'm saying? And sometimes we have to put ourselves on the line. So I'm not suggesting Monday you quit your nice paying job, okay, and say I'm going to deliver KFC. That's not what I'm saying, but whatever's going to work for you to get you out of your comfort zone. So we start with a job. So then we generally buy a house and start paying it off. Okay, so what I want to look at here is what we want to do from this weekend is we want to get some shares. So put over this side is some shares. That can be a share box. And over here we'll have property. In other words, property we're going to buy. These two things are businesses. Now with these shares we're going to use strategies that generate cash flow. So you put a dollar sign there. That's going to give us cash flow that comes in without working. That's what's great about it. So what you want to do is create this as part of your plan. So you're going to have a share business that generates cash flow for many of you. That's what you want. What we also want, and this is what I like to have, is also property. Now I don't use property to generate cash flow like in rent, etc. But in the strategies we'll go through tomorrow, what I do with property is I'm able to pull out cash flow. In other words, through equity, which we'll go through all this stuff for you. So I get cash flow out of property as well, if I need it. Okay? So in other words, this business can generate income to live on without needing to work. This business can generate income without needing to work. Who wants that? Okay? So I'm trying to make it really simple in a concept where we're heading here so you can work out where you're at and where you've got to go. Now, here's the interesting thing is, once you've got income coming from here or here without needing to work, you no longer need your job. Is that true? You no longer need that as an income. And most of you want to get there as quickly as possible, or your business or whatever. However, what I find when you don't need to work, you're going to still continue to work though. Is that true? And what you're likely to do is continue to work or move into a career that you enjoy and you believe in, and as a result, because you believe in it or you enjoy it, you tend to do a better job. Is that true? And if you do a better job in society, you add more value, you also earn more money. Okay? The simplest way to create wealth is just got to add more value. And in the morning, we'll do a session where we'll talk about how to negotiate pay rises and things like that, so you can quickly increase your income here. You know, I often share a story how a young lady in Melbourne used a strategy from a 3-day, and within a matter of 2 weeks, she took the strategy, which you'll learn in the morning, went out and negotiated with a boss, increased her income from $28,000 to $48,000 within 2 weeks. And she was able to buy her first property. So she was able to increase this, get her first property at a discount, make some profit, and she was well underway. Now she's got some money to get some shares, etc. You can see how it can be quite simple once you just need that initial step. So what will happen by doing this automatically will increase your income because you no longer need the money. You know, what's great about this, when you no longer need it and it still comes in, it's all bonus money. You don't need it. See, my share business, you know, my wife and myself, this has got so big now. What's amazing about it is every month cash just pours out of here, and I have fun managing it because it takes me a whole 5 minutes a month. Okay, you know, it took me a whole 30 seconds between the break. You know, yesterday my broker rings and says, "Jamie, blah blah blah. This is what's happening. This is the price you can get for renting your shares this month. Do you want to take it?" And it takes me 2 seconds. Boom, boom, here. Do this amount. Boom, money into the bank account. Thousands and thousands of dollars, and took me like a 30-second phone call. Okay. Now it does take me a little bit longer because I have multiple companies that I do this with, but even then, you know, we're talking only a matter of minutes, and I can operate that from anywhere in the world. What's great about this? One of the speakers tomorrow works for a company. It's called Asset Corporation, and 21st Century Academy acquired Asset Corporation recently, and we have their strategies as part of what we do. And the speaker tomorrow has been trained by a good friend of mine. His name's Warren Bourget, and Warren. Has anyone ever heard of Warren Bourget? Okay, some of you might have been to some of his seminars some time ago. He did quite well in property, okay, and he's like, property is everything, and he's showing me what he does in property, so that's great, yeah, that's good. And then I was sharing with him what he can do with shares. And he was never into shares, as he thought, well, shares seem risky, time-consuming, etc. And I showed him some things that he can do with shares. And now he's out there like a madman doing shares, etc., making an absolute fortune over here, and he thinks it's great. So now he teaches all his clients how not just to do property, but also to do shares as well in combination. Okay, and we'll look at that tomorrow, how that works. But you know, he's been able to create a whole massive income just by learning one extra strategy. Okay, I was leading up to a point before that. It'll come back to me. Okay. So, yeah, my point was, this pours out money every month, and that's what you're going to find you start getting into this. It's going to pour out money, and you don't need it. It's great. It's just there, and it's a game. It just adds up, you don't need it. Okay? So then what you can do with it, give it to charity, okay? Use it to pay for your holidays, give some to the taxman if you want, etc. Whatever you want to do with it. But just the fact it's got there, and you know it's there in case you need it, but you don't need it. That means all these others tend to work better then because you're not reliant on the money. Okay, I'll take a few questions and we'll break it up and take questions in a moment. Okay, so we're going to work on both these areas. Now some of you say, I just want to focus on shares, and when you leave here this weekend you might say, I'm just going to focus on here, okay, work on this, and then I'll look at that later. Okay, some of you say, I just want to focus on this and I'll work on that later. It's going to be up to you to decide. Okay, that's up to you to figure out. Some of you don't have equity here, so you say, well, how do I get into this and get into that? Well, the good news is we'll go through that, is that anyone in this room, jot this one down, anyone in this room will be able to borrow money to invest in shares. Jamie, what if I'm bankrupt? Anyone in this room will be able to borrow money to invest in shares. What if I'm 17? Under the legal age? anyone in this room, even if you're at 17, will be able to borrow money to invest in shares with the help of your parents. All you need from your parents is a signature, okay? You can just, while they're busy, just sneak it under them. Sign this. What's this? Just sign it. Okay. No, I'm kidding, okay? You're going to get their permission. Some of you are already working on that, huh? So, is that good news, by the way? Is that good news? I mean, the simple things that hold people back, now you're going to have a deposit of some sort. You're going to figure out where you're going to come up with that from. Okay, something that you already know where that's going to come from. But there's even ways to come up with that. We'll look at that. But a lot of people saying, here's a simple limitation. I was talking to one of my friends recently, and I said, mate, you've got to get into this. You know, you've got to be doing some of these renting shares. And he's a situation where it's not difficult. He's got difficulty in getting money through the bank. And he said, well, I doubt will they be able to get a loan for this. And I said, it doesn't matter. You'll be able to get it. Anyone can get a loan, okay, with the right contacts, okay? And we'll give you those contacts, and you'll be able to do that, set that up in Monday, okay? So what we're going to look at here, so even if you don't, in other words, you're going to use other people's money. So if you don't have equity to use, if you've got equity, you're just going to pull equity out of here or equity out of here. Does that make sense? Piece of cake. So if you have equity in the room, this is going to be so much easier. If you don't have equity, doesn't matter. Then you know what your next step is. You're going to have to access some money, okay? And might be through what we call borrowing money to get into either of these. So even if you're starting with zero, you can still borrow money, still get into the game to create this. And that's what we're looking at. Once you've got that coming in here, you no longer need to work. Then you'll still probably work. Okay? Then what we're going to do is continue to increase your income. By increasing your income, that gives you more money, okay, to save. Is that true? So if we say savings here, or increase your income, you can put more money down into here into shares, you can put more money into property. Does that make sense? Then what you can do here, as the equity in your properties increase, then we're going to learn how to take that out, and you can do two things. You can reinvest it back into property. Are you drawing this down? Okay. It's important because people want to say, well, what should I do in this situation? This should cover all bases. Or you could take this here, you could take the equity out of here and put it into here. Is that true? And what you can do on this side, we're going to have a real mess here soon, aren't we? Here, what you can do is take this income here and reinvest it back into here. Or you can take that and put it over there. And then it can become a whole cycle back again. And not only that, because if you're doing this, your income keeps on going up. If you wanted to, not that it has to, but you're going to do some fun things. You're going to be so creative because now you don't need money. It's going to happen, which is going to give you more money to put down into here. It's going to give you more money down here, which means you can now borrow more money, okay, on both sides because you have higher income, which means you can have more money going into here or into here, okay, which means you've got more money back here, etc., and then it's all done, okay? That'll take us about a day and a half to explain. Okay, give yourselves a hand. That's what you're going to do. Financial genius. Look at it. Okay. So, quickly turn to the person next to you. Explain how that works. Okay. Teach your buddy. Then I'll take some questions.
That's right. You said everyone can borrow money to invest in shares in the room. Is that right? What if I've only got a casual job? Because I've already had a look at getting a loan and they won't lend it to me because I don't earn enough money yet to be able to pay it back. So
what sort of loan are you going for?
It was a property loan.
Okay.
So for the first homeowners grant thing.
For this here, yeah.
Yeah. So would I be able to get a loan for shares? Possibly. Okay.
Yeah. Guess what the answer is?
Yes.
Is that a good answer?
Yes. Okay.
A good question.
Which bank? Any bank?
Not which bank.
No. Okay. Man.
Tomorrow you'll get a book. Okay, it'll be a book look like this, and it'll have all the contacts as far as, you know, if you want to speak to Ian Daly and anything he went through in some detail, his office, you'll be able to speak with Ian, or his office. Brokers, you know, even if you're in New Zealand, etc., you'll be able to use the brokers here to be able to do these strategies with. you'll virtually be anywhere in the world now, you'll be able to use the brokers that we have now. Finance, you can get access if you want to use the accountants that I use, my personal accountants. What else? Insurance, property sourcing, umpteen different financial organisations help you with finance. Also making it easier for property loans. But the most important one for this, so I'll show you tomorrow, you'll get this, is there's numerous ones. Actually 3 or 4, I'll go through it tomorrow, that anyone can borrow for shares. Okay? Reason being, it's a margin loan. With a margin loan, you just need a deposit. So you're going to have a deposit. Could you technically borrow the deposit? I didn't say you should. I just asked the question. Okay? Could you technically borrow a deposit? The answer is yes. How did I start my first company? By borrowing on what? Credit card. Okay? But that must be risky. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay? We'll talk about the so-called money experts in our society. You might have gathered Paul Clitheroe. I'm not a fan of Paul Clitheroe. And because Paul claims to be a money expert, and I question that because I find it highly misleading. And I know he works for Kerry Packer, so most people don't say anything negative about Paul Clitheroe, but I don't really give a rip. Because here's the reality, okay? And you will read the newspaper tomorrow, there's a full-page advertisement. It says, an open letter to Paul Clitheroe from myself. So it's interesting reading. And and we might get you a copy of it. And it'll be in the Sunshine Coast Daily and some other papers as well. But my point is not to pick on anyone, but my point is to highlight the industry that we live in. Because I'm about creating change, and I've got the courage to do it where I'm not going to be held back through fear, you know. And one of the things I want to see change in our society, including in most Western world, is that people go to learn. Well, let me ask my question. So who do people go and see to learn about money generally? Bank managers, financial advisors, accountants, etc. Okay? Interesting. In order to be a financial planner in this country, in New Zealand, in America, anywhere, in order to be a financial planner, do they have to be financially successful, financially independent, outstanding investors, lead by example, before they can stand up on a stage and speak about money? The answer is no. The only people in our society that can speak on the topic of money without any real credibility are financial planners. And that's where you see a lot of negativity now about, because guess who is the biggest threat, biggest competition of financial planners in this country? It's people like myself. Self-made millionaires that are successful investors that are able to articulate and educate others so they can access the same strategies that are not normally shared with the everyday people because they're kept to the wealthy people. Does that make sense? Very few people are willing to share that. So what we have in our society, the blind leading the blind. People go to learn off people that aren't successful themselves. Not picking on all financial planners, because there's some good ones out there. And when we find some, we'll let you know. Okay? And in other words, the blind's leading the blind. It's obvious. It's common sense. If you want to learn how to be wealthy, you'd find someone that's already done it. Okay? Because they're going to know from reality, not theory. And that's a big difference there. Also, who owns 90% of the financial planning industry in Australia? The banks. As we talked about before, see, I might as well go through this now while I'm on the topic, is we talked about the banks, you know, there's a system. If we look at the system, my God, you can see what I'm going to be covering. We have the system over this side, this is us. Society is taught, put your money in the bank you get 2 to 5%. Don't worry about investing, you work hard. So we're so busy working hard, we don't have any time for investing. Plus, investing is too risky, too time-consuming, too difficult. If you're ever going to tread that water, then you better go and see a financial planner, and it's highly regulated. So you got to see a financial planner. The question I'd say, why? Now, I was thinking about that the other day. I was in Thailand thinking, about the negativity around people like myself, from the financial planners because they're threatened. And I'm thinking, actually, I've never in my path to become wealthy, I've actually never sat down in front of a financial planner. Isn't it amazing? I've actually never needed a financial planner to become a self-made millionaire in this country. And I don't think I'll ever will. Isn't it amazing? Now, I'm not saying don't go to them, because technically, to abide by the regulations, we suggest you should seek independent financial advice, okay, before doing anything. Okay? Is that fair enough? So for ASIC and those sort of people, we appreciate that it's important that people do that. But really, I think what's most important, people shouldn't get advice. They should educate themselves so they don't need advice. That's the whole thing. Because you can be educated. See, the banks, they don't make 2 to 5% of their money. They make 100% plus easily on your money. Okay? They know how to invest. They're not concerned about the risk. Okay? They're not concerned about the risk. Yet, what do they tell us? Through their financial planners, which they all own, they all work. So their financial planner, you know what they're trained to do? The majority of their training is to sell commission products. And whose products are they selling? Managed funds, super funds, etc. Not all of them. Some of them are good, but I'm saying generally. That's what they do. That's how they earn their income. They earn their income by ensuring you invest in things that get a lower level of risk, and you don't become wealthy quickly, because if you become wealthy very slowly, and you'll probably die before you retire, you want to know how to die before you retire, watch The Money Show, you know what I'm saying? The strategy is so slow, one day, everything's risky, one day you'll retire, okay? And see, the reality is they continue to earn commission year after year on their products. There's no agenda to have you retire wealthy. There's no agenda to have you do it yourself, because if you could learn how to make these sort of returns, or even only 50% returns per annum, and know how to manage the risk, except there is risk. Because people aren't stupid. We're not stupid, are we? Who's stupid in this room? Okay, a few honest people. No, seriously, most of us are not, everyday Australians, we're not stupid. We know how to figure out and understand the risk if we educate ourselves. And we can decide and make decisions ourselves whether we want to invest and generate these returns, which you're going to learn how to do that, and I'll make it very clear to you what the risks are. Okay? I'll make it very clear. The risks to do this are less than the risks you're taking now. Is that clear? Okay? And I'll prove that for you. So we can do that with less risk than what we're doing now, but why would the systems want us to know how to do that? Because wherever we only know this side of the equation, then they make the profit on our money. And it works very conveniently. And it's going to take a lot to change that. But what is great in this country, and I think it's the baby boomer generation, is people now are demanding more. They want to be educated, which is great. Because that's the key. There's nothing that threatens the systems more than if you become financially independent and well educated. Does that make sense? Because you can't be controlled. Do you need to be controlled? Do you have to be controlled to be good citizens, yes or no? No. You're quite intelligent, responsible, take care of your money, you can do good things with it, etc. There's no need to be controlled. Control comes from the human emotion of fear. Fear designed to control. We want to create some independence. And that's the process. So we must learn the secrets of the rich to be on this side of the equation. That takes courage, that takes effort, that takes commitment, which we're all prepared to do. The benefit of that is we learn how to do that. Okay? Now, my bigger picture is to be able to help more and more people access that. Okay? And that's what we're looking at. So, what we're up to. Someone had a question. I'll take another question. Before there, yes, you'll be able to borrow. You'll need a deposit. The margin loan on this is anyone can borrow in a company structure, in your personal structure, because once you have the deposit, they don't even need to know. All they'll need to know is your name and your address. As I often say, preferably your correct address. Okay? And they will give you the money for that. Okay? That's guaranteed. Put my word on it. Every single person, as long as you have the deposit, okay, you got to come up with the deposit, they'll loan you the rest. Okay, done. Right down the back.
Jamie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep, go ahead.
Alan?
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
My name's Alan. You say that anyone will be able to borrow money to invest in shares. My experience is that I've borrowed a lot of money over a long period of time. I've paid the banks well over $1 million in interest in the last several years.
So you have borrowed a lot of money.
They had this hoop they made me jump through that got higher and higher. And one day I decided I wasn't going to jump through it anymore.